So why we picked this topic, NPS benchmarking? I remember like 2 webinars ago, we did something on NPS, CES, CSAT, and a lot of customers asked us about when should we do NPS benchmarks? Is benchmarking, just benchmarking, good enough? So there were a lot of questions asked. So we thought, why not handle that in a webinar itself rather than like answering something just on the basis of your questions. We thought of creating something which can help you as a slide when if you have to pitch it to your marketing teams or your business teams. Okay. So the most important question is, be it NPS, CS, CSAT, or any survey we do or voice of the customer, is why we do this. So let's talk about the why NPS benchmarking is important. Okay, so before like we begin to the next slide, for every one of you who's listening to us today, just look at this slide, and this shows that there is an NPS score which is of a client brand, and the NPS score is 45. So I want to know from all of you, is this a good NPS score? So that's something we will ask that on the poll. Please have a
Yeah,
look at this. Yeah, and we'll launch the poll now. Please tell us, is this a good NPS score? The score is 45, if someone can see it.
nice to have a couple of responses. Yeah, it's getting.
Yeah, there are many now. So we'll keep this for just 20 more seconds. Okay, I think let's end this poll now. And
Yeah.
we will also share the results now, what everyone has shared.
Okay.
I hope everyone can see the score. So 39 or around 40% people say yes, 30% people say no, and 30% people say can't say. They can't say whether this NPS score is good or not. Makes sense. So if we talk about yes, now think about, now I'll show you the NPS scores of the competition. So this was the NPS score of the client brand, and these are the NPS scores of the competition. Now, all the people who said yes, this is actually not a good NPS score when you compare it with your competition like brand 1, like brand 4. And even the industry norms for that NPS score for that industry was 49%. Now, this is the reason why NPS benchmarking is important. Sometimes we feel we look at our NPS scores and we see that it's good enough, that we are doing a really brilliant job. But when we check on the competition and we see the NPS score of 77 and even 64, that is what tells us where we stand today. This is the most important reason why NPS benchmarking becomes helpful. When you have to set your NPS goal or when you have to see where do you stand. So the people who said no would probably already know this because they have either done NPS benchmarking or they have seen their better scores. And people who said can't say maybe were confused whether this is good or bad. But if you talk about this industry, this is not a good NPS score. For some industries, cause NPS benchmarks depends different on industries. For example, if you talk about telecom industry or internet broadband industry, you might see the NPS scores very low, but the competition would also be low. So that's okay, but not in this one.
So Tanuj, we have a
That's
reply
okay.
from Ankesh. Yeah.
That's okay. Completely fine, Ankesh. So we can either name it as a scale, like you mentioned, or we can call it a percentage. That's not something of a problem because the calculation will always be percentage of promoters minus percentage of detractors. So you call it a score or you call it a percentage, it means exactly the same thing. Okay, so I'll move on to the next slide. Yeah. So You must have seen companies boasting about their NPS score. We have a NPS of 60, we have a 70. I have seen a lot of LinkedIn advertisements on this. I've seen company boasting on their profile page about the NPS score. So high NPS score is definitely a good thing. It means you have more people who love your brand than the ones who don't, assuming that you are measuring NPS the right way and not just sending it to the customers which are really happy with you. Then a good NPS score means nothing because you are getting biased responses. But how do you know for your own industry what is a good NPS score, or what should be your goal or target for improvement? So for that is where NPS benchmarking comes in, and it just doesn't tell you about your brand NPS, but also tells you the entire picture. For example, what competition your consumers are most likely to switch to? When, if they decide to leave you, what is the competition they'll pick? Second, what do they feel about you when it comes to your biggest competition? You have a brand A and the competition is competition B. So what do they feel if they are using both of you, or they have used them in the past or you in the past? Where do you stand in the customer eyes? Third, it doesn't tell you about the competition. It also tells you, is there a competitive alternative that you should worry about? What do I mean by competitive alternative? For example, just think about Tesla. I hope everyone is aware about Tesla. So when Tesla came in, they started thinking about creating Tesla. It was around 2007, and they got successful in 2009 when they launched their first car, Roadster. During that time, companies like Ford, BMW all knew about electric cars, that they might be able to disrupt the market. But most of them at that time continue to bring in diesel and petrol cars, and they ignored it. They completely ignored that there is a new category of cars that is coming in, which might not be a competition today, but they might be tomorrow. They might take away the current cars we are making. And they, all of them were a little slow in launching electric cars. Now everyone has it, but Tesla is more valuable than Toyota today. So Toyota, that you all know, is the most used car in Indonesia. Tesla is even more valuable than that. And how many years it has been launched? Just 15. So that is why it is important to look at competitive alternative as well when you're thinking about NPS benchmarks. And the part is, every one of you, every one of your business leaders, the marketing leaders know what your competitive alternative is. Sometimes we just ignore them. So let's go to the differences between different type of NPS. So for example, one is NPS benchmarking, then you have relationship NPS, then you have transactional NPS / CSAT CES, depending on what you are using. So the first difference is on the objective part. So what is the objective when we do NPS benchmarking? One is goal setting. We want to see what is a good NPS score, which we saw. Second, how are we comparing against competition on NPS score or on our different products and services. Third, it helps you run a SWOT analysis, like what are our strengths, weakness, and what are the new opportunities that we can capture on, and what are the threats to us. Like we talked about, for Ford, Toyota, and every consumer vehicle, electronics good were a threat. The second is relationship NPS. So some companies do this, some companies don't. That's okay if you don't do this, but what's important is you always do this. This is the transactional NPS CSAT. Why? So relation NPS is about the whole organization. In NPS benchmarking, you are doing it against the competition. The NPS, you are doing it just with your customers. So it depends. It tells you how people think on an overall level about your organization, your products, your services, your communication strategy. So it helps you bring the relationship with the customers. That's most of the time this is done on a quarterly or a semesterly basis, but it's done to your own customers only. And then there is transactional NPS, CSAT or CES. So why these are used? They are used for action taking. So this one, the NPS benchmarking never helps you in taking actions. Why? Because it is done like once a year. So if your customer face some issue on January 1 and you are asking them on December or September of the same year, they won't remember what that issue was. So that's why transactional NPS are done for action taking, closing the loop. If they tell you about something, you fix that issue, you communicate it back to them that this has been done. Or this is used for frontline evaluation. For example, in terms of support teams, you evaluate how your agents are doing based on transactional CSAT or CES, but not on via NPS benchmarking. Before I move in, I want to see if anyone has a question here. So guys, in the Q&A section or the chat section, please keep on sharing the questions, because after I finish this slide, I'll take up questions. The second is the frequency. What is the frequency for NPS benchmarking? It's mostly once or twice a year. Why? Because first of all, it's like expensive, and you cannot actually measure NPS benchmarking on a weekly basis, because it's done to do the competition analysis, and in a month's time nothing generally changes. So that's why it's done once or twice a year. Then relationship NPS is done on a quarterly basis most of the time, and transactional CSAT or CES is done mostly on immediate basis, daily or weekly. Daily can be done when you have the tech team supporting you with integrations, that something happens, you trigger a survey, exactly after that happens. For example, after a support call, your agent resolves the issue and CSAT immediately goes to your customer that how was the transaction today. So that's how the frequency of these three matters. Then who to survey? NPS benchmarking, as most of you will already know, your own users or competition users, relationship existing customers, and transactional existing customers with recent transactions. Then the next part is key actions post research. What can you do after that research has been done? So in terms of NPS benchmarking, what you can do, you can set goals against competition or improvement goals, or for your relationship NPS, that this is the goal that I think we should cover. Currently today is 45. Our top competition is at 77. How can we reach to them? How can we reach to 55 first in a year? And then slowly and slowly increase over 3-4 years. You plan a vision that you can chase that competition, because you cannot increase an NPS without doing any kind of gaming from 45 to 77 in just a year. That's not possible. So don't set goals that high. Second, you understand the relative weakness about yourself and also on your competition and improve on that. Third, when you find out your strengths against the competition, you can use them as your communication strategy, your marketing spend. You can finalize on that these are the things that customers love about us, so you can boast that as well. In terms of relationship NPS, as this is done an overall organization level, this helps you improve the relationship with the customers. Yes, you can close the loop. Yes, you can call the customers who have given you a negative rating on the NPS, and then also understand from them, will you be willing to take part in helping us improve our products or services? That's where relationship NPS helps. And transactional helps in actually taking your current bad experiences to the good experiences, which makes better customer loyalty. For example, if your product has some bugs and you are taking an NPS when they are doing a transaction, you can immediately find out about that through the transactional CSAT or CES. The same goes when a customer calls you on support. If your agent is performing bad, if your agent was rude, or if there is any changes in the process, that can be helped only from the transactional CSAT or CES. In terms of expensive, NPS benchmarking is high, as you need to survey competition users as well, and you generally don't have database for it. So what would you do? You will go ask an agency, can you provide these survey panels, use online panels or use offline panels to get customers of your competition. For relation NPS, it's low if you use technology like any survey platform which is available in the market. And if you talk about telephonic interviews or face-to-face interviews, where sometimes it's required, when your audience is older generation, or they're not available online, you don't have their emails, then a phone to phone or face to face is required, but that is expensive. And that is the same with transactional CSAT as well. If you use technology, if you can use technology, if your customers are available online, WhatsApp, SMS, you should use that and save a lot of money, at least 80% of it. But if you cannot do it anyway, then you should go for the expensive telephonic or face-to-face one. Now let's take some questions. Rajneesh?
Yeah, Tanuj. So we have a couple of questions here from
Okay.
Walia. Should we conduct
Yeah,
an
so
NPS
let's
periodically? Yeah.
it's in
Yeah,
Q&A.
Tanuj.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in a Q&A.
Okay, should we conduct NPS periodically to the regular customer, like monthly? If you talk about a regular customer and you're talking about relationship NPS, just your own customers, you can do it quarterly. Quarterly is okay. Regularly, every monthly, transactional CSAT and CES are most important, which tells you what's going on particular transactions in their customer journey. For an NPS, quarterly or semesterly should be fine. Done. Let's take the next question. Wondering, how do we know the NPS norm of the industry? So you get to know the NPS norm of the industry when you do an NPS benchmark, or when you go to for example, Neurosensum does that, and there are other organizations as well, like Kantar, Nielsen, who do all these NPS benchmarking studies. So they have been doing it for like regularly for 1, 2, 3 years. They have built the norms by industry. So either you can get that data, or you can build your own norms by first running an NPS benchmarking study, see the average over the year, and from next year you can use that as norms. But yeah, the better way is that you take the data from agency itself. Second, when doing transactional survey, should we pick NPS CSAT or CS, or we could all ask of under the one survey? Okay, so if you talk about transactional survey, you should not do NPS. You should only focus on CSAT and CES. NPS in transaction is only helpful when you are giving an experience. For example, you have a hotel or you have a restaurant. Someone comes in, they spend 3-4 days there. On a restaurant, they spend 3-4 hours, and you have given them an experience that they could recommend to someone. Then transactional NPS is okay. Otherwise, not at all. For if they call your calls contact center, your support, you should use either CSAT or CES, but never use NPS. And you can use CSAT, CES in a single survey. For example, when you're talking about a contact center, someone calls you and you ask, how easy was it to get your issue resolved? That is a CES. And CSAT, how satisfied were you with the support agent? So these two things can be captured in a, for example, a post call survey, CSAT and CS, but NPS is not required. The reason being, if in these cases you ask NPS, NPS will fluctuate a lot. Like every other day, you will see one customer who was happy today gives you an NPS of 10. They were not happy the other day, will give you an NPS of 1. And now if you are setting your goal on that fluctuating NPS, it doesn't make sense at all. So don't use it if you can. Okay. Is it good if we combine NPS with current social data? You mean social media, I believe, Olia. If you mean social media, so I can answer that. So it's a very good strategy if you combine your NPS data and see what is the verbatim feedback coming in. And also you are looking from your social media channels or your support channels that are customers facing the same issues which they are mentioning in the NPS in the social media and also in their call center. Why? Because that gives you a validation that what people are saying in the NPS, they are feeling the same from different places as well. And then it will help you make decisions faster, because your other departments will also improve of it. You'll say to them that, see, these are the trends from social media, these are the trends from NPS, these are the trends from call center as well. They are all pointing to the same thing, that, for example, our internet bandwidth is not good. Just an example. So yes, of course you can use it. And that was a really good question. Okay, so now we have one other question from Sanjaya. How to validate data from NPS benchmarking at competitor? What kind of data strategy to collect? Okay, so we will, Sanjaya, we will discuss this. We have created a slide for this as well, like how you, what kind of data strategy to collect, like how you should design your NPS benchmark study. We will see that. And if you talk about validating the data, because you, once you are preparing your questions, your whatever agency you choose, it will help you do that. When you're preparing your questions, that what is the customer from competition we should pick, you put screening questions in a way like, okay, for how long, like from last 6 months, what is the brand, 3 brands, you give them 3 to 4 choices. What is a brand that you have been using for the last 6 months? What is the most first brand that comes to your mind when you talk about this category? So these kind of screener questions are developed with your the research agency and you, to decide that the data that will come from the competition is true or not. But we'll talk more about this later in our slides. While in benchmarking NPS, should we also consider the score impact from other key drivers? Okay, so how you can the score, the impact of other key drivers is exactly what takes your NPS high or low. Even though your first question will be about on an overall brand level, that how likely you are to recommend this company to a brand, but yes, key factors definitely make an impact. So you can use that key driver analysis and use those correlation to see which of those factors is causing the NPS to go up or not. So that is something that yes, you can use, Ratiji. If you still have counter questions on this, please share those in the chat. Okay, there is one more question. In tracking study, NPS score is relative more fluctuative than CSAT score. What factors can cause the fluctuation and why it is more fluctuative than CSAT? So NPS score, I've seen more fluctuative. One reason is when we are not getting similar sample size in the next months. For example, this time the random sample that we got was from happy customers, and the other time when we see the NPS score, the random sample is from unhappy customers. So that way it can fluctuate. The other way it can fluctuate a lot is when we are sending them an NPS score, and recently they had some bad experiences with the company. So that can also fluctuate the NPS. So that's why in NPS benchmarking, fluctuations should be not on an yearly basis. Fluctuation can be when you are running it monthly and you see in 1 month the NPS might be low. So that should not worry you that much. But if it is going on a yearly basis, the fluctuation is there, that is a cause of a worry. You should ask your agency what's happening, and you should plan on conducting transactional CSAT and CES. Okay, so one last question I'll take. Is it same scale used to measure NPS and CSAT? Yes, you can do that. That is not a problem. You want to use a 10, you want to use a 5. But yeah, if you do NPS benchmarking, if you're doing a 5 and you're not taking data from some, not buying data from like set metrics or something, you're doing your own research, you can use on a basis of 1 to 5, or you can use on a basis of 1 to 10. It doesn't matter. The most important things are what you do with the feedback that comes in. Okay. I think I've answered most of the questions. Is there any question left, Rajneesh?
Tanuj, we have a couple of questions in chat as well. So I have given an answer to one of the questions, but I'm not sure about some other questions. Can you have a look on them?
That's okay. You are, so there was a question.
You can start with Ravinder.
Wait. Okay. So NPS can be a measurement that can be important to 2-3 teams within an organization. What will be the best strategy to synergize running NPS to serve all teams and not make it an overkill? Very good question, Ravinder. Okay, So how to not make it a overkill and still get other departments involved? So most important part is, if it is happening, if the NPS is mostly responding to 2 or 3 teams with an organization, I would first always start with that, like you have mentioned, right? And when you want to install NPS throughout the whole teams, it will first of all take some time unless your CEO or your top leaders are in on it. Because if they are not involved, they will not be able to set some NPS goals for every department which can be responsible for it, right? So it is super important, if you are starting out, that either start with 1 or 2 departments, build the use cases, and when you analyze that feedback, see if the data that is coming in is also talking about some other departments or other processes which you currently might feel that they are not involved, but they are. Once you have that data for 6 months, 9 months, 10, 12 months, then you can push it to that team as well, that okay, throughout the year, these are the NPS we have done, and these many people have talked about these processes, which are your responsibility. So that is where the things come in, where you can synergize it with all. So either it comes from the top, the CEO chooses that everyone will be responsible, or you find the data and then show it to them. So the other question is from Rosnia. In setting the NPS question to our customer, is that necessary for organization to provide the meaning behind each rating? For example, 0 to 6, 7 to 8, 9 to 10, or not likely to very likely, which is more fair to both? Yeah. So if you're talking to the customers, if you tell them what is a detractor, what is a passive, what is a promoter, they will be biased to give only those answers which they see what you have mentioned. But if you just say not likely to 10, most likely, they'll give a response that comes in their head. So they are not biased there. So when we are asking an NPS question, we should not be biased. So I will choose the second option which you have mentioned, Rosnia. Okay. Next question is from Satria. So what strategy should be effectively used to competition users to get as accurate answers as possible? Is giving a free reward for the respondent competitive usual works? Okay, so first of all, when you are doing an NPS benchmarking, it should be customers should not know that it is coming from which brand. So they should be blinded on it. So the options or the survey design, so that is where a very good researcher will actually help you out how to pick those questions that the customers never understand which brand this is coming from. And then you can reward them as well, because at that time they don't know that who is the brand which conducted the study. But yes, if you're talking to a competition user, if you do not reward them and you send them a 20-25 minute question, you will see, first of all, they will not respond properly, or you will see after 5-10 questions they'll leave. So if you do not want to reward the users, your survey should not be more than 4 to 5 questions. But in benchmarking, the questions are slightly more, because you're running a screening question as well while picking up the right respondents. Okay, then the question is from Divakar. In relationship NPS, how do we handle detractors who never respond for call/meeting post the survey? Okay, so Divakar, not always you will be able to get that data. So it's always better, what I advise, when you're making your survey, ask them at the end of the survey, are you willing for us to give you a call, kind of like a follow-up? Because there will be some people, like you mentioned, that they will never respond. So start with the people who agree with the follow-up, call them, then try to give them a call to other people as well, which are currently not picking. Slowly and slowly, when they see you working on the feedback and you communicating it to them as well, that last time all of you told us this and this is what we did. Once you communicate the actions you have taken, Divakar, the other people will also start picking your calls. But yes, of course, sometimes some customers will never be willing to do that. So you have to accept that fact. Okay. Then we have another question. I'm not able to see the name, sorry. Okay. Okay, that was Rajneesh. Is there a defined way to find a correlation between NPS and other matrices? Yes, you should use a key driver analysis or a correlation, in the sense that uh, this is our NPS score. These are the 4 key metrics that we are talking about. How come if you compare the NPS score with this first metric, NPS score, with the other metrics, you can actually find the correlation easily. So correlation is just about comparing whether 2 metrics are going in the same direction. The only thing that you have to watch out for is sometimes you have to confirm this with the customers as well. Once you see the correlation is there, then find if this is actually causing it as well. That is where you have to do some phone calls to actually figure out if this is causing it. So correlation can be between 2 different things. You'll see they're moving in the same direction, but that does not necessarily mean they are causing it as well. So for finding the cause, you'll have to give the phone calls to the customer, Pratichi. There's no other way. Okay, I think let's move. Oh, Pahari have a question, so I'll take that one. So for NPS benchmarking, can you talk about how we can survey competition user? I'm guessing this would be blind survey, yes. And we do not disclose our company is funding the survey. Right, Pa? I think I mistakenly answered this question in one of the previous questions. Yes, we do a blind survey. We screen the questions that way that they never get to know who's doing this study. So, and I think, Pa, let's discuss that on our next meeting as well, on more details. Then last question, how to get insightful NPS feedback from open-ended question from less educated users. If they are less educated and they are not filling the survey at all. So first of all, it depends whether your industry, in your industry, every user is that way, or there are only some few users who are that. If there are few users and you know that who are those, I will, instead of doing an NPS survey online, I would give them a call and do an NPS survey, because they won't be able to explain that on an online survey. So it's better to give them a call if you already know this category, that they are uneducated users. Okay. So Rajneesh, any more questions or should we move?
Yeah, Tanuj, we can move. I guess
Okay.
we don't have any other questions.
Okay. So what are the pros and cons of NPS benchmarking? So pros is it gives a comparative picture of you versus the competition, like which we already talked about, where you stand amongst your competition, your strengths, weaknesses, threats, and the opportunities you have. Helps you decide what is the NPS goal that you'd look for. But just make sure if you are using this for an NPS goal, please don't set the same NPS in your transactional surveys, because if you do that, transactional surveys will fluctuate a lot, and this you might not be able to achieve the goal. Sometimes you will, sometimes you'll not. Helps you in understanding your strength versus competition, and also help in communication strategy when the strengths that you have found in the survey itself. The cons are it's expensive. Why it's expensive? Because you need outside support. You don't have you always have data for the competition users, unless you can steal it from somewhere, which I would not advise, but because you don't have, so that's why it's expensive. It's time taking, because sometimes you have to find those customers face to face as well in some of the industries, so it is time consuming. And the major con for NPS benchmarking is it is not a tool for real-time action taking. Real-time action taking means, cause you are doing benchmarks once a year, so customer doesn't remember what happened. If you're asking them how was our support, they don't remember because they use your support services like a year ago. So those kind of things which you need to improve on a real-time basis, that can only happen if you are doing transactional based CSAT and CS, not through NPS benchmarking. And this is one of the biggest myths I've seen from most of our customers. they do just NPS benchmarking. They're slowly moving to transactional, but not everyone is. So that's a problem. You'll not be able to improve NPS that way. Okay, so key factors, including NPS benchmarking, the kind of questions that like we were asking before. So I'll start with the most important question is, before you decide what kind of survey you should design, how it should be, is what is your brand promise? So your brand promise will decide what factors, journey, or products you want to benchmark yourself. For example, your brand promise is that uh, you are a broadband provider, and your brand promises your internet speed should be faster. It should be the fastest, because it is happening in India. So in India, there is a company called Airtel, which is like super popular, and their brand promise is fastest internet in the whole India. So maybe it can be from Telkomsel or Indosat as well, for example. So that is their brand promise. So they have to make sure that they're asking about their brand promise as well when they're sending the survey. And for example, there are other things which are not their brand promise. Maybe faster support is not their brand promise, or maybe the application, like they are totally digital savvy, is not their brand promise. So even if they don't ask about those things, it's okay in the survey. And the second thing that you need to consider is the vision for next years. For example, a bank in Indonesia we work with, uh, they want to become a fully digital bank by 2025. So for them, when they are designing the survey, when they are choosing the competition, they have to focus on their brand promise and vision, which is about digital products that they are creating. So they don't have to care much about the offline thing, because the offline thing they are going to remove anyway. So that is the first factor which you should consider. Otherwise, if you consider all the factors, all the journey touch points, your survey will be 200 questions long, and no customer would want to fill that survey. So keep yourself focused. The other question is, against whom I should benchmark. So ideally, top 3 to 4 competitors covering your 70 or 80% of the market should be good enough, and a competitive alternative. So 80% market share means, like if you have a brand, let's say it's the broadband brand, and you have 2-3 competition who are covering 80% of the market. So it focus on the 80-20 rule, that those 80% of the competition which is covering the market is good enough. So that might be 2 or 3, and always choose a competitive alternative as well if there is one. So what is a competitive alternative? For example, in 2007, which I'm just repeating this again, in 2007, Tesla was a competitive alternative to Ford, Toyotas, Suzuki's of the world. So if there is a competitive alternative there, just make sure you're picking that one as well. Other example would be, in a banking industry, e-wallets actually became a competitive alternative. So the banks who moved faster on that moved ahead, who accepted them, rather than sitting up on their egos and saying, I don't care how e-wallets are going on. But now you check, everyone uses e-wallet. The use of ATM has gone slow and slow because of that. So if you know a competitive alternative, don't just drop your ego there, focus on that you don't be late on it, because if you are, one day you might be out of the industry, at least that product. Then how frequently I should do benchmarking? So this question comes a lot when benchmarking, because you're doing it against competition. In e-commerce, I've seen it was quite dynamic before, like we used to do 3 months. Now we have switched it to 6 months because it's not moving that much. It happened in 2020 when COVID came in, but now I think 6 months is okay. And for less dynamic industries like telecom, insurance, banking, half yearly or even yearly benchmarking is good enough. You don't have to do a monthly benchmarking that way, because you are also doing transactional CSAT and CES along with it. Then the other question comes in. So these are all the questions that were asked to us during our demo discussions or benchmarking discussions. So I'm just trying to answer that. If you have any questions about your NPS benchmarking, you're thinking, uh, in 3-4 minutes, I'll finish this slide and I'll take Q&A again. So how much sample is enough? So sampling design should be done at per brand level and per area level. For example, you have a brand A and you are present in Jakarta, Surabaya, and Bali and all these other cities as well. So you have to make sure that how your market share is divided, how much is in Jakarta, Surabaya, Bali, Medan, Makassar, how it is divided. You pick those 5 to 10 cities, and minimum sample you should take is 100 to 150 per city. Otherwise, you'll not be able to get enough data. And if you talk about the sample design, so it's important that you are measuring your own customers, your key competition users, and also your lapsers, the people who have left you for your competition. Because if you don't ask your lapsers, you might always get high scores, which is not the goal of NPS benchmarking, to get high scores. The goal is to be better on our brand promise against competition, but not hiding the fact that customers are still leaving us. So your lapsers should also be included, so you know, and same way for the competition, you should also include their lapsers, so you know that it's the right NPS score that you are getting. Which cities should I choose? That's the same, top 4 to 5 regions covering 80% of the sales. If there are 10 regions who cover 80% of the sales, do that. Then there is one other interesting thing while doing NPS benchmark. This is something that can change on your yearly questionnaire. For example, you are getting some complaints in your call center about something specific, or maybe the internet bandwidth in Surabaya is not going good, and you are like a telecom brand. So when you are keep on listening those things, those complaints, try to include that in your survey as well, so that you know it's only you or the competition is also going down with those things. If it's only you, then you know you can show it to your management that competition is doing really great in this city, in this region, because of on this problem, but we are really doing bad. And that is also a part of our brand promise. So what research data you should already have should also be taken. Now I'll take some questions before we move to the poll. Yes, Johan, we can definitely get the slides. Would anyone want to ask a question? I'll wait for one more minute before I jump to the next slide. If there are no more questions, I'll move forward. Okay, I got one. Some argue that only NPS benchmark can be treated as KPI. What is your view? Okay, so NPS benchmark is the only KPI. My view will never be that. So the NPS or any other KPI we talk about, the KPIs should always include what matters to the customer. So NPS is one because it is something which our customers respond to, and also KPIs should be what matters to the organization. For example, acquisition will always be a KPI, retention will always be a KPI. So if you talk about customer KPI, NPS will be one KPI, CSAT will be one for your support center, CS will be one for your products. So the KPIs will be different, and not just these. If you talk about your call center, a faster resolution is also a KPI. So KPIs should be based on what your brand is going through today. What is the overall goal that they have? And if NPS fits in that for the customers, that it should be a KPI, but it should not be the only KPI, because NPS is just a measurement, kind of like a thermometer. Like when we go to a doctor, they always give us a thermometer to just let us know if there's something wrong with us, but they go deep dive on other things. So don't just get bogged down on one KPI as NPS. Add others which move other three things as well: your customer satisfaction on an overall level, customer retention, acquisition, and also saving costs. So think about these four things before we finalize our KPI. Okay, so let's move to a poll. So I have a very interesting thing to talk to you guys after this. Just give me a minute, Rajneesh. Yeah. So please, guys, have a look at this poll and see, do you consider competitive alternative while designing your survey benchmarking study? Read this question again and honestly tell me yes or no. I'm really happy to see the answers. I'll end the poll now. Rajneesh, can you also share it, the poll?
Yeah, Tanush, sharing it.
Okay. So I'm really happy with seeing these responses, the people who have joined today. So most of you are mentioning that yes, you do consider competitive alternative, and the people who are saying no, I don't know, maybe there might be some other reason, but I want to explain to everyone a thing called marketing myopia. I'll stop sharing this now. So I was first going through this, like I read it I think 2-3 years ago. So it was a study done by Harvard. They said that almost 75% of the products that we are marketing today, products not brands, will no longer exist in the coming 2 years. And one of the major cause for this was because many of the company leaders have what is called marketing myopia. So what they mentioned, so I've just taken this from the Harvard study itself: a near-sighted focus on selling product and services rather than seeing the big picture of what consumers really want. So successful companies focus on customer needs, not their own products and services, right? Because those needs, either you can be the one who will meet those needs, or there will be an alternative who will blow you away with it. So that's why including a competitive alternative is very important. And we'll see a couple of examples as well. uh, I think most of you will remember Kodak, right? So do you when we were small, Kodak was the only camera that we talked about. But do we talk about Kodak now? We don't. And do we talk about Nokia now in terms of mobile phones? We don't. Why? Because they were facing from this problem, the marketing myopia. They continued to ignore that Sony cameras are coming in when digital cameras boomed, and Kodak did not plan for it. And by the time they started doing, they were just too late. Maybe there can be there was problems, the leaders were not able to identify it, or maybe they were like just ignoring it. It can be multiple reasons, but because they did not do it, Kodak doesn't exist anymore, because they did not have any other product. Then the same Nokia, once such a popular phone brand, suddenly when Android came in, they kept on ignoring it. They went on with Windows phone, but they did not go with Android. Now who has a Nokia phone today? I can say from 70 people we are today, or 60, maybe one person has Nokia, or maybe they don't. So nobody focuses on Nokia anymore because they were too late. So there are some things that you have to pick up if the industry is picking up. You cannot ignore them. So that is where you should, if you know something about your competitive alternative, include them in your NPS benchmarking as well. Think about what business are you really in? just a film camera business for in Codex example, or photography. If they thought photography was the business, not just film camera, they would not have faced the same thing. Same for Nokia. So that's something that you have to remember. What is marketing myopia? I'll take
Tanuj,
another question. Yes.
yeah, yeah, I'm saying the same. Before moving to the next slide, can you give the answer of this question?
Sure. So how to increase sample consistency to do NPS per month? Because usually we do NPS only get 2% of the transaction population from users. Okay, so response rate has always been a problem when we talk about NPS. So I think when you're going on, first of all, you need to focus where your customers are. Uh, so for example, if your customers mostly talk to you on WhatsApp or SMS and you're sending them an email survey, they're not going to reply any. So you have to know where they are. And the second thing to increase that response rate is to let them know what actions you have taken. So not just take actions on it, but also letting them know. So most of the companies, what they do, they have started measuring feedback, but they have still not found a way to take actions on that feedback. So why would a customer want to reply to you? They will not. That's why the NPS is only 2 to 4%. So uh, if it stays 2-4% when you have tried like everything, when you have started measuring surveys on other channels, like maybe for example WhatsApp, which is more suitable for your audience, and you have also started communicating the action plan, then also the customers are not responding, then we have to think about actually calling them and understand why. Are they even receiving our feedback that we are sending, or they just continue to ignore it because they don't like filling surveys, we are sending too many surveys? So there can be multiple reasons. So if you want to increase sample consistency, first be consistent in taking action on that feedback and choosing the right channel. Do these two things and then let me know, because we'll keep on doing webinar. In our next webinar, you can come back and again and let me know what's happening. Okay,
Absolutely.
so I'll move on to the next question, which is not question. So there are some things that I've seen, myths. I call them myths for NPS benchmarking. So many people on LinkedIn, they ask me, Tanuj, where can I pick the NPS benchmark of my industry? So they are sitting maybe in the US, or maybe they're sitting in Europe, and they're asking about NPS benchmark for their industry. So I tell them that you'll have to conduct a study for this. So what they do, they go on Google, they type NPS benchmarks for 2022 and try to find data from anywhere. Now what happens? You are sitting in Europe and you are taking the data of NPS benchmark study done in the US. Now US has completely different culture from you. In the US, people are more blunt on the face. They might be giving you very low scores, or in some cultures, they might be giving you very high scores as well. And for your country, it would be completely different, and for your industry as well. So what the mistake people do, they're sitting in Asia, Europe, and they're checking the NPS scores of 2022 or 2021 on Google, finding scores of US industries and try to set a target that way. And then maybe sometimes your country is giving more scores. The culture of the people, they are more willing to give 9 and 10 scores, and in US they don't. So now you are comparing apples to oranges, not apples to apples. So when you are doing NPS benchmarking, or you want to set up a goal, don't search on Google for NPS benchmarks. If you cannot afford to do an NPS benchmarking study, just run your own NPS scores, see what are the things people are mentioning, improve on that, check back in next 6 months how the NPS score has improved, and then set up a target. So it can be done that way. Do not Google it, because if you're sitting in Indonesia Googling in it, I don't think you'll find open NPS benchmarks for every year. The second myth is once a year NPS benchmarking will help you drive actions to improve CX. So some people I have spoken with, they do once a year benchmarking study. They ask their customers everything from A to Z. How do you like our service, our app, our delivery, our product one, our product two, and so on. Now, do you think customers remember each and everything about what happened when they use your product? They don't. They just give you an overall picture. So with the overall picture, you cannot take actions. They have to remember things for you to take action. So that is why transactional surveys are very, very important, where you are measuring the surveys real time and you're getting that information real time. So these are the two myths for NPS benchmarks that I wanted to cover. Any questions, or let's move to a use case?
So Tanuj, as we are running out of time, could you emphasize on use case?
Sure. You Rajnish, you can start. Yeah.
Sure, sure. So as till now we have covered what is NPS benchmarking. We see what can we do, but it will be better to give you a use case which we have done with our customers. So we get a customer, a very popular broadband provider in Indonesia, who wants to benchmark itself from against the competition. So for them, what we done that, what we done for them. So we simplify, we understand what exactly what they are doing, and we understand in that time they have 10 steps, journey steps. So for we understand that those 4 10 steps are very wide to cover because they are promising something different. So we we put them in 4 key steps, which is based on their brand promise, and most often what users use touch points mostly. So for that, after that, once we design the key steps, we move to the we choose top two head-to-head competition because there are several players, but we can basically budget is something we have to focus on. So for them, the budget is not that good, so we decided to move on. Instead of 5 to 6, we moved to two head-to-head competition because their market share percentage is very high. It was about 80%. So we almost get what we desire. So after that, once we completed this, we already mentioned these things in previous slides as well, because you can see the next point is deciding the cities, uh, which is 80% of the subscribers. So we already mentioned this because you don't have to shoot the survey or choose your audience in a whole the region, because you need to focus on those who have the majority of your customers.
Yep.
So for them, we made it for 10 cities, and after that we utilize your own database for self NPS because they have done that, and for competitions we have used survey panels.
Yeah. Online
So
panels mostly. Yeah.
yeah. So after that, we initial level we done some benchmarking on semester level. But after that exercise, we got to know the market is not that much dynamic that time.
Yep.
So we can move it like annual and 2 years, 2 years benchmarking. So we done this for them.
Okay. Just a minute, Rajnish. I
Sure.
Because people have to leave. It's already time. So I
Yeah.
have one question for everyone before they leave. Like, we do a free consultation with everyone who has a question on NPS CSAT or any kind of benchmarking. It will, you, because those of all who have attended our webinars know it's never a sales pitch. So if you have any questions, just let us know yes or no, so that at least we can reach out to you and have one on call with me and Rajneesh and get your answers sorted. Yeah, before you leave you can answer this. I'll just keep it for 30 more seconds, then we'll move to the presentation again. Thank you for answering this, guys. Just 10 more seconds. If someone wants to say yes or a no, they can say it. And most probably Nanda from our team will reach you out to set up a meeting. That's it. Okay, so I'll end the poll now. Thanks a lot, people.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Yes, Rajneesh,
Yeah.
now go ahead.
So continue.
Yeah.
Can you move to the next slide?
Yes. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time. Yeah.
Thank you, Dhanush. Thank you. So, as we covered all the steps, now we move to the framework for them. So, as their brand promises high internet speed, like you can do your business in high with a
Faster
speed,
speed. Yeah.
faster speed. So we design the framework for them. That, as you can see, we have four journey milestones: pre-purchase, installation, internet performance, complaint handling. So we we segregate these four milestones in different key attributes. For pre-purchase, you can see that the key attributes are speed, understanding, ease of access. So how we get this? We get this from the NPS data or the surveys they have earlier shooted with their audience. For
Yeah. And
installation, we found out the speed is, like you can see, speed is constant in all the journey milestones. So as they promises in so it has to be there. So
yeah.
installation, you can see key speed is there, key knowledge is there, information there. So this is these key attributes is completely depending on their use case, their competition. It can be vary
Yes.
from your journey touch points. That can be your
Yep.
for your industry. So
Yeah. One thing I would
yes,
like to add here. So these key attributes are ones which were asked in the survey. For the pre-purchase, there were three questions: one on speed, understanding, and ease. Understanding is how the person who contacted you was able to understand what you need. Speed is the speed of process, how soon you are getting that installation done or a call done. So their brand promise, as Rajneesh mentioned, was speed all over. That they want to get things done quicker, because customers these days need quicker resolutions, quicker installation, quicker purchase process. So that's why the speed is already added. So these are the attributes and metrics that even we discussed in the questions, that what kind of questions that you should prepare when you're doing the NPS benchmarks. Okay. So improving on these key metrics is what will take your NPS higher. And for these three metrics to actually improve them, the most important part for you is to take the surveys on transactional basis as well. Yes, Rajneesh, go ahead now.
thank you, Dhanush. So, as we can see, figure out the framework. Now it's time to do the sampling. So we have plan those samples in 10 cities we have already mentioned. So what we have done, we have made like 740 in total interviews, or you can say the audience they want to survey. So there are 740s from their customers, and in total, as we already mentioned, we choose two top competitors. So for each competitor, we divided this count in equal manner. So you can see there are 370 from one competition, and there are other 370 from other competition. So this will give you a gist or a insight what exactly your competitors are doing, or what they are thinking, that your competitors customers are thinking about you. So this can be insightful
Yeah,
for benchmarking your NPS.
yeah. So it's like he mentioned. So client interviews and total competition are exactly same numbers. So even though we have taken less, the competition one and two do not need to be exactly the same as client. The total competition should be the same though. This is how the sampling is done. Yeah. And this is the output.
So
Yeah, Rajneesh.
yeah, yeah. So output, you can see the output is an overall NPS benchmarking, journey-wise NPS benchmarking, and improvement areas for the future. So these 3 points we get from the results. So journey milestone is something for pre-purchase. You can see the clients, like the NPS can be vary. You already see the NPS is varying from all these attributes, but overall level you will see how you are performing on these. So overall, you can see that and clients NPS is 48%, and NPS score is 48. For competition 1, the NPS score is 49, and competition 2 NPS is 45. So this is only on those factors, key attributes we decided earlier.
Decided, yeah. And if you look at the installation, the client NPS, the installation was not that doing well, but the competition was better. So for this, that is where we advised them, because they were at that time they were not doing transactional service. So we figured that out. So we advised them that to understand what's going on exactly deeper and actually improve, recommend client to start transactional level CSAT program for this touch point and slowly to other touch points as well. So that is
So
how,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead, Rajneesh.
Yeah, so I was telling. So we see the difference bench, like all aspects are different NPS score, but it doesn't matter. Like in one case, your NPS benchmarking score is good as compared to your competitor, but that doesn't matter. You can forget about because it is performing well. You should not focus on this. You have to focus on another as well because they are not
Hmm.
doing well, but you need to carry on your good work on the particular aspect you are doing good.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we have one question from Sanjay, Renish on this, that did the milestone or miss the purchase touch points is directly to the installation? Yes, you're right. So we asked the how was the purchase process was asked in the installation process itself. Otherwise, like there will be just one more survey where we would not need that, because their focus were more on speed. So the purchase touch point in the speed itself, they were asked, they make sure that if someone asks them for a new connection, they get back to them. The SLA was like around 24 hours to 48 hours, something like that, that the SLA is that. And after the account is installed, in that survey it was asked how was the purchase touch point. That's how those answers we got, which you just mentioned. Okay, and there is another question that I saw in the chat by Rosnia. Okay, in conducting NPS CSAT CS for a bigger organization, how big are the team? How many people need to be in charge, or whether one person is enough? So, it now totally depends. If you talk about one person and you are just starting out, is okay. You are just starting with maybe a relationship NPS, like you're doing it every quarterly, trying to understand what's going on, and slowly moving to the transaction level. So once you are starting out, if you are just the one person, that's okay. But what you have to figure out once you're running those surveys, what are the departments? When you get that NPS feedback, you will see the feedback will come for different departments if you're asking for verbatim data as well. So somehow you have to find a way to convince that department, either one department, to take actions on that feedback and then communicate it to the customers. Because you're just starting out, you are one person and nobody will give you a team of 10 people on day one. So figure out one or two departments will listen more to you for 1 year or so. Try to see show the ROI of those improvement. Okay, so we figured out this issue in the NPS survey. We have improved this, and this has bring these many referrals, this number of acquisition. It has saved this much on cost, or it has raised the CSAT score to this. When you show those data points, then slowly you can start demanding for your team. You can start with one person, just the relationship NPS. That's okay. Don't have to do all transaction on day one. That's a journey that you'll have to take, Rosnia. Okay, so next question. I think this one we have already answered. Is there any other question on the chat? Thank you, I got it. Okay, Rosnia. So I think because we have a lot less time, we'll conduct another session on NPS CS CSAT. So there's just one thing that I wanted to tell everyone before we can leave. What's the time right now, Rajneesh? So we are like 15
Schedule
minutes up.
time.
So I'll just take one thing, and if anyone has a question, please let me know, because I'll just stop this after this one discussion. So people ask me, what if I can't do an NPS benchmarking? How should I put a goal? So don't worry, even if you're a small business or a big business who is just starting it, and you cannot afford benchmarking, your management doesn't support it, that's okay. Do this instead. Start measuring NPS for the first 6 months and see the trend. Check your average score around those 6 months and then measure the impact on NPS on small changes you made after listening to feedback. If you have made some changes, you have communicated to the customer, see what is the impact that it has done. Once you know the data from the past 6 months, set up a goal 5 to 10% above that for the next 6 months or a year, and try to work more on the suggestions that have been given in that feedback. And you will see the NPS score will rise on its own. So once you make improvements, communicate the action with the customers, and then you'll see NPS score rising on its own. So you don't have always have to start with NPS benchmark. Start with your own. Make yourself as your own benchmark. Your last year data can be your benchmark data, or 5% above that data, that I have to get better at it. But you can only improve it if you take actions on the feedback. Without actions, you will never see a rise in NPS score or even a rise in your customer happiness. So that's what I wanted to say. If you do not have any more questions, I'll wait for 1 or 2 minutes. If someone has a question, please put it out. Otherwise, we'll end this session today. And the things that I have left in the slide, I'll share with all of you, because I want to make sure that we don't take much of your time today. Yeah. Does anyone have a question? Please let us know in the chat or Q&A. If you don't have, that's also okay. Just make sure when you guys leave, you'll get a small survey in the Zoom. We want to know how we did today, and we also want to know what is the next topic that you want to hear. So the topic that you mention, if 4 or 5 people ask for it, this is something that we'll pick the next time. Otherwise, we'll think about our topic of our own and go with that. So thanks a lot, everyone. I don't see any more questions today.
Yeah,
Nice having you all. I'll stop sharing my screen. And don't worry, we'll share the recording maximum by Thursday or Friday, and also the presentation with everyone who joined, or the people who have not joined, that's also okay. We'll just send them on their emails. Thanks a lot,
Thank you,
everyone.
Stay safe.
Stay safe and have a very, very good day. And thank you for